Okay, Chevra, B'ezrat Hashem, let's get started. We're holding in Masechet Ta'anit, with Bet Amud Bet, 12b at the Gemara. Yeah, right there. Right there. See the Gemara? Now let's just remember where we're up to. Last week, we finished off with the Mishnah. The Mishnah told us that if the Jewish people had already been fasting the first set of fasts, and they weren't answered, means there wasn't yet rain. So then the Chachamim would decree a second set of fast days, and if they were still not answered with those three, they would decree another third set of 7 more fast days, and after that 13 total fast days, they wouldn't decree any more public fast days. What would happen is the Yechidim, the Talmidei Chachamim, they would accept more fast days perhaps on themselves till the end of Nisan, but there was no more public declarations of fast days. Now, we said in the Mishnah, the second set was more chamur. It was more strict in many different ways than the first set. So just as an example, the first set, the fast only started in the morning. The second set, the fast started shkiyah, from nightfall, the night before. The first set, there was no isur of rechitza, of shoes, all these things. The second set had those chumrot already. One of the chumrot we said is va'asurin bimlacha. They're not allowed to do work on the second set of fast days. So the Gemara is going to ask the following question. I understand you're not allowed to do rechitza, washing, sicha, anointing, tashmish amita, relations, all of these things, there's pleasure involved in them. So you're making a fast day, people should feel not so good, so you stop those things. But stopping work, that's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to not have to work, to not to do melacha. So why would the Chachamim say you're not allowed to do melacha? And we're going to see this is actually based on a pasuk. It's based on a pasuk, as we'll see from the Gemara B'ezrat Hashem in Sefer Yoel. Says the Gemara, Bishlama, it's about 7 lines from the bottom of the page. Bishlama kulhu, I understand all of these things. Itbiu ta'anug, there is enjoyment, pleasure in them. Rechitza, washing, v'sicha, anointing, v'tashmish amita, relations, all of these things, there's a pleasure involved, and the Chachamim were saying you're not allowed to engage in these because it's part of the sadness, it's part of the suffering of the fast day. I understand. But regarding work, tsarhu, that's suffering. Meaning, if you say they have to go do work, that's considered a tsar. So why is it considered, why do they refrain from melacha? Why was that one of the things that's prohibited? If that's the chorah, not prohibiting pleasure, the opposite. Why was that asur as well? So Amar Rav Chizda, Amar Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, Amar Kra. So Rav Chizda says the name of Yirmiyah bar Abba, it's based on a pasuk in Yoel. In Sefer Yoel, there was some sort of a sad situation that was happening, or a difficult situation, and they decreed fast days. We're about to see. Based on the context of the words of the pasuk, we're going to deduce that melacha is also prohibited. Melacha is asur on fast days. So this is not so much based on logic, like we said, it's considered a refraining, stopping pleasure, but really it's based on a pasuk in Sefer Yoel. Yoel ben Petzuel, by the way, we said, was the son of Shmuel HaNavi. We've learned that before. But what does the pasuk say? Imatan, I'll catch you up quickly. We just started the Gemara. The Gemara said, we know on the second set of fast days, there was more of a chumrah. One of the chumrot was asur b'melacha. So the Gemara says, I understand asur b'rechitza, b'sicha, b'tashmish amita, all of those things, those are stopping pleasure. I understand that's logical, but why would there be an asur of melacha? Melacha is a tsar.
To show the tsar.
But melacha is a tsar, meaning to not have to do work is actually enjoyable.
Because the batala causes you to just to keep your mind in the tsar.
I hear that, so the Gemara says it's based on a pasuk. Let's see. Based on a pasuk in Sefer Yoel. Let's see. Amar Kra, the pasuk tells us in Sefer Yoel. It's the second wide line on the page. It says like this, regarding fast days. In Yoel, it's talking about fast day. Kadshu tzom. It says, Kadshu tzom, prepare a fast. Kadshu is sanctified, means prepare. Prepare a tzom, prepare a fast day. Kir'u atzara, call atzara. Now what's atzara?
Atzeret.
What is Atzeret?
Stop.
Stoppage.
But
Okay.
Atzeret is also Shmini Atzeret.
Oh, but in the Torah, Atzeret can refer to 2 holidays. What are the 2 holidays it could refer
Shavuot
to?
and Shmini Atzeret.
Shmini Atzeret and Shavuot. So Kir'u Atzara, call Atzara, Isvu Zekenim, gather the Zekenim. Okay? So 3 parts of the pasuk. Prepare a fast day. Call a Atzara, which we're going to see refers to those Yamim Tovim, referring to Shavuot or Shmini Atzeret. That's what Rashi says here. Exactly.
But it's just basically a comparison.
One second. Isvu Zekenim and gather the elders. Says the Gemara. We compare fast days in terms of Isur Melacha to Atzeret. We compare Tzom like Atzara. Tzom like Atzara. K'Atzeret. Just like Shavuot and Shmini Atzeret.
What is Atzeret?
Atzeret in the Torah literally means, Matan's right, it means stoppage. Stoppage. Stop. It's true, that's what it means in the Torah. La'atzor, to stop. But in the Torah, when we refer to the Yamim Tovim of Shavuot and Shmini Atzeret, they're called Atzeret. That's true.
Yeah. Okay.
So the Gemara says,
But
one second, let me just finish the sentence. Yes, that's also true, but hold on. So, the Atzeret in this pasuk is referring to Shmini Atzeret or Shavuot, which is a Yom Tov. And we know there's an Isur Melacha on Yom Tov.
Right.
So just like Isur Melacha on Yom Tov, also on Tzom. What is this? It's a Hekish. It's like a Hekish, comparing the parts of the pasuk. Ma Atzeret Asur B'asiyat Melacha. Just as Shavuot and Shmini Atzeret is prohibited in doing work, Af Ta'anit, also on a fast day of Tzom, Asur B'asiyat Melacha. You're not allowed to do work. Now ask me a question.
Why are they comparing them?
Because they're next to each other.
Oh,
The ideas are next to each other. It says Atzeret. It says Kadshu Tzom, referring to a fast day. Kir'u Atzara, right? Call Atzara, Atzeret. And then it says Isfuz Kenim. Okay, so just like Shmini Atzeret and Shavuot, there's Isur Melacha, you're not allowed to do work. Also on the fast day, you're not allowed to do work. Now ask me a question. Ask me a question based on this drasha.
To ask you a question?
Ask me a question.
Ta'anit is not into this pasuk, right?
Well, it does say tzom.
לא הבנתי.
So, ask me a question on the pshat we just said. Again, what is the mikor? What's the source that there's an isur melacha on the fast day? Because the pasuk says tzom next to atzara. So therefore, just as isur melacha exists on atzeret, Shmini Atzeret, Shavuot, also isur melacha exists on tzom, fast day. Based on that comparison, what's the obvious question? Ask me a question. No. Okay, I hear you going the other way. But keep it going in the direction that it's going. What's the source of Isur Melacha for a fast? Atzeret, Yom Tov.
Okay. But in Yom Tov we're happy, we enjoy, we eat.
Okay, that's true. But let's say we keep the comparison. You're right, that's true.
No.
But there is Isur Melacha there, so there's Isur Melacha by Tzom as well. But the Gemara says, when does Isur Melacha begin on Yom Tov?
From the evening.
From the evening before. The Gemara here is going to tell us when it comes to the fast, Isur Melacha only begins in the morning. Okay? Even though the fast, we said, begins the night before,
Okay.
Isur Melacha only begins. So the Gemara says, how can you tell me Isur Melacha only begins in the morning? If you're comparing it to Shmini Atzeret and Shavuot, it should begin like the Isur Melacha of Shmini Atzeret and Shavuot, which is the night before.
If it's an Akesh, it's complete Akesh.
Exactly. Compare full. Let's read that inside. That's the question. Asks the Gemara, Ima Atzeret. If so, you'll say like this. If so, Ma Atzeret, just as Yom Tov. May Orta, the Isur Melacha begins, Orta means the night before. The Isur Melacha begins when the Yom Tov begins, which is the night before. Aftanit Nami May Orta. So too with the fast, the Isur Melacha should begin the night before, but that's not true. Isur Melacha begins in the morning. So says the Gemara, if you're comparing it to that, you should be a full comparison. So Amar Rabbi Zera answers, L'didi mifresh ali. It was explained to me, Minei de Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba. This is based on the pasuk. Let's go back to the pasuk. Amar Kra, this pasuk in Yoel says, Isvu zekenim, gather the elders. Now I'm going to read it and then I'll explain it. Dumya da asifat zekenim. the Isur Melacha is compared to the gathering of the Zekenim. Ma sifat Zekenim bayom, just as the gathering of the Zekenim was during the day, af tzom nami bayom, so too the Isur Melacha of the fast day is only going to be bayom. I'll explain to you in a minute. But just hear it out for a second. The third part of the pasuk said Isvu Zekenim. We're about to show there was some sort of an asifat Zekenim, a gathering of
Like the
Zekenim.
Shivim Zkenim?
I'll tell you in a second. But that was done by Yom.
Okay.
Just as that was done by Yom, Aftzom, the Isur Melacha of the fast day was only by Yom. Okay, now let's just put it all together for a second before I even explain. We want to know, why would there be an Isur Melacha on a fast day? In the second, third sets, we know, fine. Okay, so there's a pasuk in Yoel that compares Tzom to Atzeret. Just as Atzeret, Shmini Atzeret, Shavuot, there's Isur Melacha, you're not allowed to do work. Also, Ta'anit, you're not allowed to do work. But the Gemara says if you're making that comparison, make it full. Just as Isur Melacha on Atzeret begins the night before, also on a fast day it should begin the night before. Oh, no, I'll tell you how we know that's not true, because the third part of the pasuk says, Isvu Zekenim, gather the Zekenim. Gathering the Zekenim was done during the day, so too the Isur Melacha of the fast only begins during the day. Now, what is the gathering of the Zekenim? This is something fascinating. Listen to this. If we would do this today, I think maybe the communities would be a lot better. It used to be, when there was a fast day, the morning hours, it wasn't like we do actually today. It's very interesting. Today, what do we do in the morning of a fast day?
Daven.
We daven. We do davening, we do Kriyat HaTorah, we do those kinds of things. That they would do the second half of the day. Very interesting. They would do all that kinds of stuff after midday. After midday. In the morning, the focus was gathering the people together, and they would analyze the averot of the city.
Like Tisha B'Av style.
But Yuchap, it's a very interesting thing to understand. They would gather all the people together and figure out, you, Yankel, what gezel do you have in your house that's causing there to be a shortage of rain? You, what did you steal yesterday? They would go through trying to figure out where is there an Aveirah that would potentially cause a lack of rain. Can you imagine doing this today? Imagine gathering all the chevra, and Rashi, I'll read Rashi in a minute. He explains this, is they would be me'ayninan b'mili demata. They would analyze the matters of the city. They would go through and try to figure out where are there Aveirot in people's houses that we need to clean away in order that the rain will come. So that's Asifat Zekenim. That was the gathering of the elders. The Chachamim would get together and they would go through what's going on in the city that's wrong, that's probably causing the issue, whatever it is, shortage of rain, for example. They would clear that up. That would be the morning hours. Now in the afternoon hours, we're going to see, they would have the first half of the afternoon, let's say from 12 to 3. They would do Kriyat HaTorah, they would do the Haftarah, Vayichal Moshe, like they do on a fast day. And then the last part of the day, they would daven. We're going to get into that in a minute. But what the Gemara is saying is like this. Since the Pasuk in Yoel is saying, Isvu Zekenim, gather the elders, when would the elders gather together? In the morning. That's when they would gather and discuss what's going on in the city. So too, the Isur Melacha in the Pasuk, on a fast day, is in the morning. Okay, so it's a few steps. Clear? So let's go through the steps again outside and then we'll see it again inside. Step number 1. Why is there Isur Melacha? Because it says Tzom next to Atzara. Just as Atzeret is Isur Melacha, also Tzom, fast day, is Isur Melacha. Okay, but maybe it should be the night before then.
It says Isur Melacha because what's the comparison? Because it says soon?
Atzeret is Shmini Atzeret and Shavuot.
Right.
You're not allowed to do Melacha on those festivals.
Right.
So just like there's Isur Melacha on those festivals, also on a fast day.
What's the connection between that and the fast day?
Isur Melacha.
Why? When you said, why do we have
because
Isur Melacha?
the pasuk compares them in Yoel. Look at the pasuk.
What does the pasuk say?
Look at it. Take a look. It's right there. Yeah.
You
3
watch,
parts of the pasuk. It refers to Tzom, then Atzara, and then the third part says Isvu Zekenim. It's the beginning of the Gemara. Look at the pasuk. It compares them.
Sanctify, prepare for the fast. You watch,
Yeah, I'll read it to you in a minute. But the point is, then the Gemara says, beautiful. So if you're comparing it to Shavuot and Shmini Atzeret, so then the Isur Melacha should start the night before. Oh, no, since it says Isvu Zekenim, and the Zekenim would gather in the morning, so Isur Melacha also only begins in the morning. So it's a double hekesh, really.
I don't
Here's a double hekesh. One is to teach us Isur Melacha, that's comparing it to Atzeret, and the second step is comparing it to the end of the Pasuk. Isur Zekenim, it teaches us the Isur Melacha only begins in the morning. 2 steps. What's your question, Matan?
Again.
Gather the Zekenim.
Because that was done in the morning.
And that was done in the morning, so the Isur Melacha also only begins in the morning.
But the cash in regards to the Isfuz Kenim, it's related to the Tzom, to the fast. What about the Yom Tov? The Yom Tov start from night.
Yom Tov is just used in the context of the Pasuk to teach us Isur Melacha. That's the drasha here.
So if the Isur Melacha for Yom Tov start from the night, why don't
That's
do
the
it?
question. But the answer to that is, the Pasuk specifically writes Isfuz Kenim to tell us you use the detail of Isur Melacha, but don't confuse it totally like Yom Tov. Rather, it's only in part.
And when we say
Very
Isur
interesting.
Melacha, it's not Isur Melacha like a Yom Tov.
No, I think it means it's, no. I think it does. I think it is.
Really, it actually
It
means.
seems like from the Gemara. It sounds like
It
because
doesn't
that's
mean
what.
that you're not just doing work.
No,
It means that
Shmini
you're actually
Atzeret.
not doing
I think that's what it
Like
is.
Shabbat?
I think so. I think so.
Like Shabbat.
That's what it sounds like. Shmini Atzeret. What's the Isur Melacha? Very interesting, right? Very
But
interesting.
today they poskim like this, in case there is no
I
rain.
don't think we have these types of fasts today.
We don't
I don't think we do these. I don't think we do Tanuyot of Taniyot
there is.
about the rain today.
There is Chazashon, there
One
is
second, Chaver, before all the questions, I want to read it inside. Chaver. Yes, in the second set. I want to read this inside, Chaver, because I just spoke it out, but let's read it inside now. So let's read that last step again. So again, Amar Rabbi Zera says, L'didim mifr shalim mined Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba. It was explained to me in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba. Amar Kra, the pasuk says, Isfuz kenim, gather the elders. Dumyada asifat zekenim. So the Isur Melacha is like, it starts when you do the gathering of the elders. Ma asifat zekenim bayom, just as the gathering of the elders was done during the day, in the morning. Afsom nami bayom, so too fasting
Any
was
specific
done
time in the morning or
during
from Alot HaShachar?
the morning. What?
Any specific time in the morning that they're also going to...
Doesn't say clearly. That's not
mention?
clear. That's not clear. But it sounds like from the beginning, in the morning. So asks the Gemara, but ve'ema mitiara, maybe it's in the afternoon. Maybe really they gathered in the afternoon. And maybe the Isur Melacha began in the afternoon. Amar Rav Shisha, afternoon. Amar Rav Shisha B'rei Rav Idi, so Rav Shisha B'rei Rav Idi says, Misayeya Leila Rav Huna. This is a support to Rav Huna. As we're about to show, Rav Huna teaches us the gathering was done in the morning. So the fact that we're concluding that supports Rav Huna's position. To Amar, because Rav Huna says, Mitzafra in the morning, Kinufya. In the morning they would gather. Like I explained to you, we'll see Rashi in a minute. They would gather and they would discuss the Averot of the city. Heichi Avdi, what would they do? Amar Abaye, Mitzafrat Palga de Yoma, from the morning until Palga de Yoma means half of the day, until midday. Until 12 in the morning, you could say, or 12 in the afternoon. Ma'ininan b'mili demata. Ma'inina is like iyun. They would analyze, they would look into mili demata. Mili is matters, mata is the city. They would look into, they would analyze the matters of the city. Mikan ve'elech, beyond midday, meaning 12 and on, let's just say. Riva de Yoma, for a quarter of the day, let's say from 12 till 3. For the next quarter of the day, Karinan b'safra v'aftarta. They would read from the Sefer. What's the Sefer? Sefer Torah. They would read Vayichal Moshe v'aftarta and the Haftarah. So they would read the Kriyat Torah and the Haftarah, fast days. Mikan ve'elech, from the next till Shkia means the last quarter of the day. Let's say from 3 to 6, the last quarter of the day till nightfall. Va'inan rachami, they would ask for mercy, which means they would pray. Where do we find a reference to this? Shne'amar, the pasuk in Nehemiah teaches us, Vayakumu al omdam, they stood up in their place. Vayakumu al omdam, they stood up in their place. Vayikru b'sefer Torat Hashem Elokehem, and they read the Sefer of Torah, the Sefer Torat Hashem of their God. Revi'it hayom, for a quarter of the day. V'revi'it mitvadim u'mishtachavim la'Hashem Elokehem. And for the last quarter of the day, mitvadim. Mitvadim means they would confess. Vidui, they would confess. U'mishtachavim la'Hashem Elokehem, they would bow down to Hashem their God. So from Nehemiah we see, when it came to a fast day, the second half of the day was broken up. The first half of the second half means the second to last quarter of the day, let's say 12 to 3, was reading the Torah. And then the last quarter of the day, let's say from 3 o'clock to 6 p.m., was praying. Right? Bowing down to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, davening. Now we're about to challenge this, but let's just speak that out now. So what we just said is the order of a fast day, and we're applying that back here. In the morning, they would gather, discuss the Averot of the city. We're calling that Asifat Zkenim. That second half of the day was dedicated to, half of it was dedicated to Kriyat Torah, and the second half was dedicated to davening. Okay? Now look at Rashi. It's a very interesting Rashi here. Like I said, if we would do this today, probably things would be a lot different. Ma'ininan b'mili demata. Everybody see that Rashi? Ma'ininan b'mili demata. Yeshka? It says, Drisha v'chakira. You see that? Atan? Ma'ininan. It's about 7-8 lines. In Rashi. Like 7-8 lines from the bottom. Ma'ininan b'mili demata. They would analyze, they would look into the matters of the city. Drisha v'chakira. What's Drisha v'chakira? Cross-questioning, investigation.
Demand and investigation.
Investigation. They would investigate. Risha means to seek. Hakira means to investigate. Means they would seek and investigate. They had the what's it called when you send like a secret investigator? What do you call that? What?
Spies?
Spies. No, I don't know spies. But the point is they would investigate. Livdok b'ma'asehem, to check their deeds. Be'iskei b'nei ha'ir, regarding the matters of the people of the city. Im gezel v'chamas b'neihen, if there is gezel and chamas in their hands, b'neihen, u'mefaisinotan, and they would appease them. Meaning, if somebody was ripping someone else off, they would make sure that it was good, that it was worked out. Because one of the reasons rain could not come is because people are ripping each other off. So if there's some current theft going on, they would work that out. Can you imagine if this would happen today on a fast day? Freddie gets together in shul and he says, Yankel, I know that you're ripping off of Ramel over there. It'll be a different kind of fast day, that's for sure. It'll be something. Stam on the side, the chiluk, what is the difference between Gezel and Hamas? Does anybody know the difference? Gezel and Hamas. What is the difference in, there are two different ways of referring to theft. But what's really the difference?
Hamas is
It's Hamas. I mean, not Hamas in Gaza.
No, but we're talking about complete mess.
It's kind of like extortion.
Hamas we're talking about complete mess, not only Gezel.
So, in the context of thievery, Gezel, Gneva is when you steal in private. Right? Gneva is when you go into somebody's house and steal something without them realizing.
Hamas also with a married woman?
That's a different story. Gezel is when you steal outright. It's I go over to you in the street, I have a gun, I say, give me your money or I'm going to kill you. That's Gezel. Outright, straight. Gneva is I go into your house, you don't realize, it's much more secretive. That's Gneva. Hamas is when I pay you for something, but I force you to sell it to me. Hamas, like a Khamsan. Khamsan is somebody, it's like the mafia, walks into your store and he says, I'm gonna take it or leave it, but meaning you don't have a choice. That's Khamsan, that's a Hamas. It's different types of thievery. They're all thievery, they're all stealing. It's just different methods. And there's different halachot actually applied to each one. It's where I forced you to sell it to me. I pay you. I can pay you well.
Take your car, tell you sign the deed, it's $20.
Exactly. I might pay you the full amount even, but that's a Khamsan. Because I'm not giving you a choice. That's not a fair sale.
Usually you don't get fair price.
Right, so
Otherwise it's like a regular.
It's mafia. It's
not
mafia.
Khamsan.
Yeah. No, but a Khamsan, that's what Hamas really is. And we talk about it as the Avera. It's forcing you to sell it to me, essentially.
If they pay you full, where is the Hamas here?
Well, if they pay you full, even if they pay you full, I don't want to sell. I don't want to sell. I'm not interested. It's Hamas. That's a general Khamsan.
Not for sale.
Not for sale. That's interesting. But anyways, either way, back to the story. So the point is, in the morning they would analyze the matters of the city. The second, I should say, the third quarter of the day, they would read the Torah. And the last quarter of the day, till Shkia, they would daven. That's what
second quarter is?
Reading the Torah. Torah v'aftarta. Torah and Aftara.
First, Mili de Milta.
Mili de Mata.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Reading the Torah?
Yes. And then they would, V'aftara goes together, and then they would daven to Hashem.
Third quarter?
Praying to Hashem. No, third quarter was Torah V'aftara.
So what's the second?
The whole morning they were involved in Milei Demata. That's what it sounds like over here.
Okay.
The whole morning, from 12 till 3, from the third quarter of the day, Torah and Haftarah, and the final quarter of the day was Daven, was Tefillah. Okay. Mevakesh Rachamim.
So it's like third.
Third what?
The first, there's
Half.
3 parts.
3 parts. The first half,
The first part is that they are
3 parts.
dealing the
Yes, exactly. 3 parts.
the city matters,
Yes, yes,
Davin and Tachanunim.
exactly. Exactly. Very interesting. This is what they used to do on these fast days. Yeah. Okay, let's continue now. Let's look at the top of the Gimel Amud Aleph. So the Gemara, let's just finish off this section. So the Gemara asks, turning to Gimel Amud Aleph now, Epuchana. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe the first half of the day, they would do Kriyat Torah and praying, and the second half of the day was Milei Demata. How do we know that it was the second half of the day where they did Kriyat Torah and praying? Maybe that was the first half of the day. That's the question the Gemara is asking right now. So we're going to show from Psukim and Ezra. That's what we're about to show. It's a very interesting context over here. Let's see the Psukim inside, and I'll explain the context after we've seen it. So the Gemara answers, Lo sal kada'atach, that can't enter your mind. Tichtiv. Because in Ezra, the Psukim teach us that the second half of the day was when they would pray. We know that for sure. How do we know that? Because it says in Ezra as follows, Ve'ela ye'asfu kol chared b'divrei Elokei Yisrael. It says, to me they gathered, yasfu, they gathered, kol chared b'divrei Elokei Yisrael. Chared, charedim. It means those people that are fearful or quick. Hasten, in the way the article translates hasten. All those that were quick or fearful, b'divrei Elokei Yisrael, by the word of Hashem, al ma'al hagoleh v'gomer, because of ma'al hagoleh. Goleh are the exiled Jews, the Jews coming back actually, and ma'al is their avera. Ma'al is the thing they did wrong, their iniquity. The avera of the goleh, of the people who had come back from exile. V'chtiv, and the pasuk there continues and says, u'v'minchat ha'erev. Minchat ha'erev means the time of the afternoon offering, meaning in the afternoon. That's really what it means. Minchat ha'erev, in the afternoon. Kamti mita'anitai. Ezra says, I got up from my fasting. Ve'efrisa kapai el Hashem. And I spread my hands to Hashem. Now what does spread my hands to Hashem mean? That's a language of tefillah.
Right.
Exactly. So it says in the afternoon is when I daven. And this is a fast day. So you see clearly that for Kapai El Hashem. So you see clearly that the prayers went on in the afternoon. And since we know the Kriyat Torah and the prayers went together, obviously that was all done in the afternoon.
How you can relate it specifically for the Ta'anit?
Because I was talking about a time. I'm going to tell you right now the story. But just you see clearly, it says, I prayed in the afternoon, Minchat Erev. So therefore, since Kriyat Torah and the prayers went together, that was in the afternoon, and the gathering was done in the morning. Now, what's the story over here? It's an amazing story. This is something fascinating. It's in Sefer Ezra. I happen to just learn this in Masechet Sanhedrin also, about a different halacha, but I'll just tell you, we look back in history sometimes. We think the days of Ezra Sofer, right? These great.
Before the Gemara and Sheknes Gdolah, no?
He was.
Wow.
Ezra Beitino. That's actually part of it. But we think to ourselves, at least I know I do sometimes, you look back and you think to yourself, all of those people were tzaddikim. All of them, the whole generation, they were all tzaddikim. But the same problems we have today, many of those problems existed then too. So I'll give you an example. It's an amazing thing. You hear, you'd be like, wow, is it in there? We know, we learned in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, what happened? The Jews were, after Choban Bayit Rishon, where were the Jews? They went to Bavel. And then Paras Madai overtook Bavel. They destroyed Bavel, and the Jews were sent from exile under the Babylonians, under Paras Madai, the Persian Mede Empire. We got into that. We had Achashverosh. We had the whole Purim story.
We weren't already in exile?
We were. For sure we were.
Okay.
But that was a continuum of Galut Bavel. But the Paras Madai Empire overtook us. Now we were subservient to their Malchut. We have the whole Purim story. We know the Purim story. That's Persia. We're coming up now. Baruch Hashem, we're Nadar. The Jews were all subservient to Paras Madai. And by the way, there is a Shita in the Gemara that says, really, when you talk about saying Hallel, Paras Madai, really we were still in exile. It wasn't like after the Purim story, we had a Geulah. By Yetziat Mitzrayim, we left Egypt, we had a Geulah from the Egyptians. After the Purim story, we were still in exile by the Persians. It's only after Achashverosh died, his son Daryavesh took over. 2 years later, we know what happened. He said to Ezra, you could take the Jews back and go and rebuild the second temple. Okay.
Daryavesh is the Koresh.
Daryavesh is...
It was this Daryavesh, because also Koresh was called Daryavesh.
Yeah. So the Gemara calls him that. In the Psukim it does refer to the same person with these three names. But there are two people actually. We call Koresh an earlier person as well. That's why we have Darius 2, Darius 1, it makes it a little clearer. But anyway. Ezra makes a big announcement. We're going back to Eretz Yisrael. Okay? And what would you say would happen if you make that big announcement? All the Jews would go back, right? That's not what happened.
Geula.
That's not what happened. Some of the Jews decided to follow after him. A lot of the Jews decided we're staying in Bavel, in Paras Madai.
Like in Egypt.
It's like today. If Mashiach would come today, I think a lot of Jews would probably say we're very comfortable in America.
Vahamushim.
Lo aleinu, but that's the reality. So there too. I was speaking to Jacob actually months ago about this, maybe a year ago even, and he told me something fascinating. I have to check this to confirm if it's historically accurate, but he told me that the Iranian Jews, the Persian Jews, were the descendants of those Jews who stayed under Persian dominion from Chorban Bayit Rishon. That's not from Chorban Bayit Sheni. He said that his great-great-great-great-grandparents, what's that? I just assumed that it would have been when the Jews were kicked out of Eretz Yisrael the second time, Jews emigrated to that area of the world.
Some went, but there's still, the majority of Jews stayed in Persia after the first.
So that's what he's saying. He's saying that Iranian Jews descend from those people that were there from after Chorban Bayit Rishon, which means they were there hundreds of years before the general populace was exiled in the destruction of the Second Temple. They were there for a very, very long time.
The Temple was Rome, and did not take over from Persia.
Right. It's just a fascinating thought to think about that. Anyway, Ezra comes back to Eretz Yisrael, and he looks and he sees, Lo Aleinu, many of the Jews who came back brought their non-Jewish girlfriends and wives with them. So what happened? Jews had married non-Jewish women, and they schlepped them back with them. Can you imagine? That's what I'm saying. We sometimes think back like, they were immune to these issues. You know,
they didn't have social media.
Intermarriage in America, that's an American concept. It's nothing to do with America. Happens to be, unfortunately, it's a terrible machla in America too. But it existed then. So Ezra makes an announcement. And this is actually where this comes in. When Ezra realized the terrible intermarriage that had happened, so he started to fast in order to create some sort of a kapara. And that's what we're talking about in the Gemara, actually. That's what we just referenced. But I'll just tell you the end of the story because it's fascinating. He makes an announcement that in 3 days' time, I want everybody to gather. I believe it was in Yerushalayim. And anyone that doesn't gather with us, his property is going to be confiscated. His property is going to be seized by the Beit Din.
Okay.
He'll lose his property.
So which is forced.
We learn a halacha from this. This is the Mikor for Hefker, Beit Din, Hefker. And what does that mean? Hefker means ownerless. Beit Din has control over Jewish property. And if Beit Din wants to say, we're going to take your property and give it away or keep it, they have the ability to do that. This is actually the source for that principle. Ezra was allowed to confiscate property. Bottom line is, he gathers them all together 3 days later. Pretty much everyone comes, and he gives them strong musar. How could you come back and you're bringing your non-Jewish wives with you? What is this business? And they separate. Imagine. That shmooze, the drasha, that Shabbat in Shul was pretty powerful. But what I took away from this is sometimes we look back in history, we think, they were all tzaddikim. Intermarriage, assimilation, that's a new concept. It's not a new concept.
But according to what we read, that their spiritual level, there was no need even for brachot. Okay. So the spiritual level was much higher. There was not even tefillah.
I'm not saying about level, I'm just saying in the actual things that people did.
Anshe Emunah Avadu,
No,
right?
I agree with you. I'm agreeable. We hold up the Ridat HaDorot. They were greater generations, that's for sure. But it's interesting to note that the Psukim tell us they did.
I was told that actually they went back later.
Probably they did later on. I stopped there.
HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to the generation of Noach 900 years to live.
Right.
And they didn't do tshuva. No.
But the kids, so the reason we're bringing it here, just back to the story so we don't get lost, is Ezra said, all those who were worried or concerned about the word of the God of Israel gathered, al ma'ala goleh, because of the Aveira of the Jews that came back from the diaspora. What was that? It was the issue with the non-Jewish wives. And it says, this is talking about on a fast day, I got up in the afternoon from my fasting, and I spread my hands to Hashem, which means I prayed. So the point we're just proving from this is, you see the prayer was the afternoon, which means that the gathering was done in the morning. That's the point that we're just bringing out from that story in Ezra. I just thought it's a fascinating story we see from the Nevi'im. It's actually Ketuvim, but amazing, that's the story. All right, we'll stop here, Chevra. We'll pick up Amara from...
You remember what you told me once? We have the Torah, the Tanakh